Hershey and Dennis Hopper. A true story of triumph. Hoosiers on USA, Saturday night, November 23rd.
Welcome to the 700 Club.
Good to be back with you again today. The boss is off today doing some very special teaching preparation. And when Pat gets down to the business of analyzing what's going on in society and starts to prepare teachings, it's going to be world-changing in terms of what he's doing.
He has a phenomenal mind because he has to do 4 hours of these audio tapes for January. And Pat has a way of being able to sit down, having studied and prepared, and just give so much phenomenal information and wisdom that he has accumulated over a lifetime. His memory amazes me. I mean, I can read something on Friday and I don't remember it by Monday. But Pat just has an ability to retain all this information.
Well, we're living in a world and in a society where we have to have individuals like him who can analyze what's going on and look at it from a Christian worldview and really make a difference. And that's, I mean, he really challenges me personally as being president at the university. I feel like I need to be current and up to date on what's going on. And Pat becomes a real role model, but also a real challenge, too, to keep up with.
Yeah, well, he'll be back with us tomorrow. Well, score another victory for life. Yesterday, President Bush vetoed a bill that blocks enforcement of the gag rule at federally funded family planning clinics. Full details ahead from CBN News.
Plus, this young athlete had a shining future as a soccer star, but he blows his big chance on a couple of cheap thrills. Watch his compelling story coming up.
And also ahead, meet a man who almost wasn't. He tried to take his own life as a teenager.
Pulled the gun out where it was kept in the drawer there, and I began to play with it. I released the safety, and I put it up to my head.
Well, the good news is he never pulled that trigger. Find out why on today's 700 Club. And maybe we should also mention, Dave, we'd hoped that Charles Stanley would be with us today. He's a very avid photographer, and he was going to talk about his photography, but he's not well. So we would ask that you would pray for him, that God would give him a speedy recovery.
Well, in the news, if President Bush were a sports team, he would be enjoying an undefeated season. The president has won his 24th consecutive veto battle with Congress. This time it was over the important issue of abortion counseling in federally funded family planning clinics. John Black has this report from Washington, D.C.
Congress came up 12 votes short Tuesday in its effort to override President Bush's veto of the Health and Human Services Appropriations Bill.
Chair lays before the House the following message from the President of the United States.
The President vetoed the bill because it contained an amendment, the Porter Amendment, blocking enforcement of a pro-life regulation preventing abortion counseling at family planning clinics. Pro-abortion lawmakers like Les Coyne tried to make the President's veto a free speech issue.
Also keep in mind that the Porter Amendment would merely restore free speech rights to health care professionals.
Congresswoman Olympia Snowe tried to make it a women's issue.
Make no mistake about it, the failure to override is something women won't forget in this country, nor should they.
Representative Chris Smith, however, termed the vote override attempt the most important pro-life vote of the year. And Henry Hyde said freedom of speech is not what abortion advocates want.
The last thing in the world Planned Parenthood wants, and many of you who advocate their agenda, is informed consent. You don't want a pregnant woman to look at the video cassettes of the fetus in the womb. God forbid, you civil libertarians, I ask you to include within the circle of people that you're responsible for the unwanted, the homeless, the handicapped, and the unborn. They are members of the human family. That's what this is about.
President Bush is now 24-0 in the battle of the veto. He has vetoed 24 pieces of legislation, and Congress has not been able to override any one of them. Congress must now reconsider the Health and Human Services Appropriations Bill. President Bush says if the ban on pro-life regulations is removed, he will sign it. John Black, CBN News, Washington.
Wow, that was powerful in terms of the logic of this whole approach to abortion. And again, it's going to continue to be, and throughout this next election year, I'm convinced it will be a focal point of most of the battles among the people who are hoping to be elected.
You know, Henry Hyde is a phenomenal orator. I've shared a platform with him on 1 or 2 occasions, and it's because he believes with all his heart. How can we turn away from innocent children who are longing for life and walk away? It's not just a political issue. It's far greater than that.
It really is. And again, we have to, as Christians, continue to be very much committed to keeping that issue at the forefront. One of the things that worries me, Sheila, is that so often we do not run the race to the end. And we've talked about this before. And in this election year, those of us who are pro-life are going to have to be willing to run a very tough race, because I think it's going to get extremely nasty. We were talking earlier today about the fact that I think there's going to be an increased attack on conservatives, on people who have pro-family types of views, attempts to undermine their credibility, to do everything possible to diffuse this situation so that those who have a different agenda can be elected in the coming election.
Yeah, because the truth remains the truth no matter how unpopular it becomes.
That's right.
Well, while Terry Waite and Thomas Sutherland enjoy their new freedom from captivity in Lebanon, there's new hope for the remaining hostages there. Sam Walker brings us this report.
The UN Secretary General says he thinks he's found a formula that almost guarantees freedom for the remaining 5 Western hostages in Lebanon. Javier Perez de Cuellar says he's talked the hostage takers into separating the Westerners from the one Arab-Israeli issue that has held up further hostage releases. That issue has been the kidnappers' demand that Israel first release more than 300 Arabs it has imprisoned. But Israel won't let the Arabs go till it has positive proof of what happened to 7 Israeli soldiers who disappeared in Lebanon in the last decade. Since de Cuellar has separated the 2 issues, he says he's standing confidently by his prediction that the 5 Western hostages, among them Americans Terry Anderson, Joseph Cicipio, and Alan Steen, should all be free by Christmas. This also takes some pressure off the strained relations that have developed lately between Israel and the U.S. Without any more Americans in captivity, the Bush administration won't feel the need to strong-arm Israel to free its Arab prisoners. Sam Walker, CBN News.
Certainly hope that what Perez de Cuellar says is true, and we will see those men home before Christmas. I was thinking when I watched the pictures of Terry Waite, I mean, there were such celebrations, and I think too of Terry Anderson's sister. What a long battle she has fought.
And she has done it without any kind of reservation. She has kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And she is credited, I think, a lot of people who are praying for her and for her brother as well. And we need to continue to pray and believe that before Christmas, wouldn't that be something before Christmas, if all of those hostages could be home?
And I would imagine this is almost more difficult this time, because there's something about knowing that it's really close at hand that makes it even more difficult. I just pray that God will give all of those families strength in those remaining days.
Well, violence in the home, it's coming to you in living and sometimes lurid color, courtesy of MTV. And psychics are helping the United Nations sniff out hidden weapons in Iraq. Linda Freeman has these stories and more from today's CBN News Desk.
MTV is the most violent music video network. That's what a new report released by the National Coalition on Television Violence is reporting. The study found that violence on MTV and other music videos has increased, with MTV averaging more than 29 instances of violent or hostile imagery per hour. Overall, music videos averaged more than 20 acts of violence each hour. The study of nearly 750 music videos on cable and broadcast television found that 60% of the music videos contained explicit violence, suggestions of violence, degrading sexual portrayals or sexually suggestive themes, profanity, and smoking or alcohol consumption. A satanic-looking mural on the wall of a public school classroom shocked many parents in Longmont, Colorado recently when they attended an open house at the Sunset Middle School. The parents complained to the school board about the so-called artwork, which was painted by students over a 6-year period on an art room wall. The mural depicts a horned, goat-headed devil along with black-fanged demons, dragons, and hooded druid priests. A committee appointed by the school board reviewed the mural and decided late last month to have it quickly painted over. But this month, a handful of other parents and students are complaining that the mural's removal constitutes censorship. They say the demonic-looking drawings are not religious or occultic. A second school board committee has now been assigned to review the decision to strike down the controversial mural. The United Nations has hired a high-tech psychic firm to help find those elusive weapon sites still hidden in Iraq. The company is called PSI Tech and is run by a retired military intelligence major. The psychics at PSI in Maryland drew 2 supposed weapon sites in Iraq through what's called remote viewing. That's an occultic ability to locate and accurately describe unknown things or events from far away. Psychic viewing has been researched in secret by military intelligence since the 1950s, but has only recently gained more believability in military circles. That's today's News Desk. I'm Linda Freeman. Sheila, Dave, back to you.
Psychic spies? You have got to be kidding.
You know,
I mean,
it's like the world has gone totally mad.
I guess in our desperation, of course, one of the things we know from a biblical perspective, that as this new world order emerges that is controlled by Satan and influenced by those who are responsive to Satan, then there will be the acceptance of some of these more bizarre tactics and techniques. And the idea that the United Nations would employ psychic spies to try and, what would they call that? That astral projection stuff or whatever they do to figure out where in the world weapons are buried? You've got to be kidding.
When you think of the contrast, Dave, we won't let a child take a Bible to school,
right,
but we'll hire psychics to go look for weapons sites. I mean, how? That's bonkers. Do you know the effect that kind of story has on me? It makes me want to know who I am and put my roots down deep into the Word of God. I was reading this morning again through Ephesians chapter 6, where it talks about the spiritual battles that are going on all around us, and then gives us instructions as to what to do so that when it's all over, you will still be standing. And that's my prayer for each one of us as God's children.
Well, I think that's what should be motivating us at this time, because truly this is going to become more and more a spiritual battle. And when it's that blatantly being practiced within the halls and confines of the United Nations, it should really cause us Christians to stand up and do something.
Well, there are many curious things going on in the world today, and a familiar face is back on the job in the Soviet Union. Eduard Shevardnadze is once again foreign minister. CBN News reporter Richard Hunt has the story.
11 months after hotly resigning his post as Soviet foreign minister, Eduard Shevardnadze is again Moscow's chief ambassador to the world. There was considerable surprise when Shevardnadze quit the Gorbachev regime because he had been brought to Moscow personally by Gorbachev as Minister of the Interior and later appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs. At one point, he was also a major general for the oftentimes violent secret police in the Georgia Republic. His conversion to democracy was another surprise to Soviet watchers. Shevardnadze's stormy resignation warned of the likelihood of a coup, which indeed occurred the following summer. He was replaced by Alexander Besmertnik, who later was fired for his role in the failed coup. The current foreign minister, Boris Pankin, will take a demotion and become ambassador to Great Britain. The Soviets are likely to receive a great deal of Western aid anyway, but the resurrection of Shevardnadze will be pleasing to many world leaders who got along with him very well. This increases the prospects for even more cash from Washington and points west. So whether it's an orchestrated scenario or a bizarre chess game, change continues in the Soviet Union, and this latest move will be well received at the international level. Richard Hunt, CBN News.
Well, well, well.
But extremely complex part of the world, and having spent, a week there, obviously you don't become an expert on the Soviet Union. That's absolutely impossible. But this one really catches me by surprise. I thought Shevardnadze was gone. He was out of the picture, but him coming back on the scene, clearly from a Western political perspective, is a positive in many, many ways.
Yeah, but I'm sure too they're just purely using common sense. They know that financially they're in such desperate straits. People are going to be very hungry this winter. He's a popular man. He and James Baker have spent many, many hours together, call themselves friends. And I guess it's one more effort to reach out so that we will, as I said in the story, come over with more and more dollars, which they desperately need.
Refugees from Haiti are desperately trying to get into America, but the Haitians aren't the world's only large group of immigrants. As George Carden reports, the world is facing several refugee crises.
A judge has put on temporary hold Coast Guard efforts to forcibly repatriate thousands of Haitian boat people. Since a violent coup in September, more than 3,000 Haitians have tried to flee to the U.S., but ended up in custody. The government's taking a lot of heat for being heartless to the refugees.
These people have fled seeking a better way of life. That's what America is all about.
Congressman Charles Ringgold says the U.S. may be returning Haitians to death or torture in their homeland.
But to ship them back to these ruthless killers, to me, is inconsistent what a great democracy is all about.
Immigration officials say most of the Haitians don't meet the test for refugee status, that they aren't fleeing political persecution at the hands of Haiti's new military masters. But the U.S. isn't the only place getting tough on would-be refugees. Just days ago, British-run Hong Kong forcibly ejected some 50 Vietnamese boat people, and it says thousands more will follow. Thousands of non-Kuwaiti citizens are sitting in limbo between Iraq and Kuwait because the Kuwaiti government wants to keep out many of its Palestinians and others who it felt betrayed Kuwait during the Gulf crisis. At the end of that crisis, the world watched hundreds of thousands of Kurds trying to flee Saddam's butchery by escaping to Turkey. But Turkish soldiers kept almost all of them out, sometimes at gunpoint or by beating them back across the border. Albanians fleeing poverty and tyranny have been rounded up by Italian authorities in recent months and forced back to Albania. In fact, across Central Europe, the fall of the Iron Curtain is causing considerable trouble for lands like Austria and Germany. They're actually starting to build their own version of the curtain, throwing up miles of new barriers and manning their eastern borders with thousands of extra guards to slow the flood of Soviets and other East Bloc citizens who want to go west. The immigration flood is also affecting the politics of Western Europe. Much of the appeal of France's conservatives is their call for strict restrictions on immigrants so France can be saved for the French. In Germany, the anti-immigrant feelings have spilled into the streets where neo-Nazis and skinheads have taken to beating dark-skinned foreigners and destroying their new homes. After years of the West imploring dictators to let their people go, it now finds in many cases it doesn't have room or jobs or even tolerance for them once they are allowed to go. George Carden, CBN News.
Oh, it's so heartbreaking.
Sheila, this is a crisis. This is really a ticking time bomb, not only in those countries, but here in America. You know, we have stood on the principle of give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And there's a major backlash going on in this country right now that says, look, we can't take care of our own. Why should we let more people through our gates who have to be looked after by those of us who are already here? But contrast that with the biblical mandates, particularly the instructions in the Old Testament that say that we're to welcome strangers, that those who have no homeland, those who basically are in search of a city of refuge, should be welcomed through our gates, and that the nation will be blessed, the city will be blessed, who entertains and cares for the strangers within the gates. It's an interesting dilemma, and again, from a political vantage point, it's going to be one of the issues that I'm sure will be addressed in the upcoming campaigns.
One of the things I'm encouraged by, it almost seems as if the world is like a Titanic, you know, going down. And I think for a time, some of us as believers were tempted just to stay off board on the lifeboat. But I see so many people who are going back and making a difference. Franklin Graham, Dr. Graham's son, works with those refugees, the Kurdish refugees. I have friends who work in the refugee camps in Cambodia, bringing the good news to those people who are desperately hurting, who are desperately needy. Because I said to Franklin, don't you find that refugees find it hard to accept a God of love because their circumstances are so bleak? And he said, no. He said they are ready to hear of something that will give them hope, if not for this world, for the next.
Well, I think that's part of what our motivation has to be. I know in Canada, for example, now in the streets of Toronto, there are over 110 different languages spoken on the city streets of Toronto. It's one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. And there was in Canada a bit of a reaction to that, there still is, but among the Christians in the city of Toronto, they're now seeing this as a tremendous opportunity to go into all of the world and preach the gospel without even having to leave the shores of the nation of Canada. They're coming, and we have the opportunity to really show them that God of love.
Well, coming up today, a soccer star wastes his future for a few cheap kicks. Stay tuned for his story next.
And tune in tomorrow for the 700 Club. Dave Thomas, the king of the Wendy's hamburger chain, has something new to brag about. He'll spread the beef, so to speak, about adoption awareness right here tomorrow.
Hey, nice voice. Ever thought of taking it on the road? Well, here's your chance. Star Song Records and the 700 Club are teaming up to find the best new Christian artist of the year. And it could be you. Finalists from 4 categories will be flown to Virginia Beach to compete on the 700 Club. And the grand prize winner receives a national recording contract from Star Song Records. So what are you waiting for? Call now for your official form and contest rules. There's no telling where it might lead.
The holiday season is upon us again. a season when families gather together for traditional celebrations. But not all families will enjoy the holidays. As we prepare our tables, many others will feast on whatever they can find. The holidays are a time to relax and enjoy each other's company. Yet for some, there is no time to relax because each day is another struggle to survive. As you prepare to enjoy the warmth of the season, wouldn't it be great to share your joy with those who have so little hope? This holiday season,